presentation. And if you can go to the next slide, please. So just a couple of ground rules before we begin. Just know that since this is a Zoom webinar, all participants have been muted. As soon as you joined in, you are not able to share your video or to unmute yourself. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to type them into the chat box or in the Q&A icon at the bottom. This webinar is being live streamed on our Workforce Solutions YouTube page and is also being recorded for future viewing. Feel free, we will be issuing that out at the beginning of next week so that you can also share with anyone who wasn't able to join us today. You will also have access to this PowerPoint and resources via a Padlet link at the end of this presentation, and we will share this with you as we continue. Next slide, please. So some of our webinar features, an ASL interpreter has been spotlighted in the event that you would be needing one, and closed captioning is also available. As you can see at the bottom, there is a little icon that says CC Live Transcript. If you would like to turn on or off the closed captioning, you can either show the subtitle when you hover over it, or you can also hide the subtitles. So now we will introduce our speakers for today's webinar. Next slide, please. And we will begin with Ms. Megan Bennett.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Megan Bennett, and I am the Community Outreach and Awareness Specialist for Texas Workforce Solutions Vocational Rehab Services.
Hi, and my name is Adriana Martinez. I am the Regional Transition Program Specialist for Texas Workforce Solutions Vocational Rehab Services.
Next slide, please. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeanette Lara. I am a student hireability navigator with Workforce Solutions Lower Rio, located in McAllen.
And good morning, everyone. I'm Ricky Rondon, Jeanette's counterpart, also a student hireability navigator for our service area. Next slide, please. So once again, thank you all for joining us. And in this presentation, we have collaborated with the Texas Workforce Solutions Vocational Rehabilitation Services so that they can tell you about the transition services for students with disabilities. You're also going to learn about your local Workforce Solutions office, Lower Rio, covering the counties of Hidalgo, Star, and Willacy. And we're going to tell you about our role as Student Hireability Navigator and how we can assist you with your transition goals. Lastly, we're going to identify some disability resources and tell you local contact information on how to stay informed and connected with us. Next slide, please. So we'll begin with Ms. Megan Bennett.
Hi again, everyone. What I want to do real quick is to talk with you a little bit about our general vocational rehabilitation services program. I will talk about the program as a whole, and then Adriana, after me, will share with you some more specifics about the transition specific program for students. But our program does work with all ages. So next slide. Before I begin, I do want to point out a few things that last year in 2020, Vocational Rehabilitation Services celebrated its 100th year. And this is a national program of vocational rehabilitation. So we have been around for a long time. The program has gone through some changes in names. For most of the time, our agency was known as Texas Rehabilitation Commission, and or TRC for short. So some of you may remember that name. Then in 2004, we combined with Health and Human Services, and our name was changed to Division of Rehabilitation Services, and people knew us as DARS. And then in 2016, the Texas legislature combined us with Texas Workforce Solutions. And so now we are partnered with Texas Workforce and VR. So just to let you know that all of those names are still the same program that we've always been for 100 years. Our goal as vocational rehabilitation is a program to help people with disabilities prepare for, enter, engage in, or advance in competitive employment. The program also helps businesses and employers recruit and retain and even accommodate employees with disabilities. Next slide. As I said before, we work with adults with disabilities, youth and students with disabilities, and then also businesses and employers. But our whole focus is on disabilities and work. Next slide. There are 4 criterion to our eligibility for services. The first one is the individual must have a disability. It can be a physical, mental, emotional, or a sensory disability. What sometimes we forget is that our definition of disability is much broader than like Social Security Administration's disability definition. We look at anything that is a physical, mental, emotional, any kind of a diagnosis that is moving on to our second criterion, it is an impediment to your employment. So if that diagnosis is resulting in some impediment, some problem with you obtaining or maintaining or even advancing in employment, you may be eligible. So the third criteria is the individual must require our special vocational rehab services to prepare for employment, enter into, engage in, or advance in competitive employment. And then fourth, the individual must be presumed able to achieve competitive employment. You must want to work, ultimately is what that means. So let's move to the next slide. We do have a process that we have to go through. And that process, we have to go in order sometimes of these things. So the first step is to take what we call your initial contact information. Basic name, address, phone number, figure out where you live so that we can get you assigned to the appropriate office. We do have offices all over the state of Texas. So if you know someone that lives in a different area from the lower Rio area, they do have services available to them as well. The next step is to do the application, where we ask a bunch of questions, we gather information, we find out a lot about you and your disability. And then based on the information that we gather, we can determine if you meet our eligibility guidelines. And once you're determined eligible, then we move into what we call the planning phase that sits down with you and talks about what your interests are, what your needs are, what some of the disability difficulties are. And then we come up with a plan and we put that plan into action. And that's what we call our active services. And with the whole goal that we give you these services and then you are able to get to work. And then our ultimate goal is to successfully close your case as employed. So that's just the process kind of in a nutshell. Next slide. People ask us a lot, what services can we provide? That's a very difficult question to answer because it all depends on what you need and what your disability needs and what your employment needs are. We base all of our services on the individual and what it is that they need to get into an employment or stay employed. So it's really hard to answer that question because our services, the things that we can do are so broad, but they ultimately have to be reasonable and necessary for you. Next slide. Some of the basic examples of things that we do provide to people are what we call counseling and guidance. And that is our training and working with you and helping you figure all of this out. We do a lot of job placement services where we work individually with the person in finding just the right job. We can provide job coaching on that job to help them learn the job well and manage the accommodations. We can also pay for vocational training or academic training for people if their goal for employment requires to have some specific training. We can pay for that. We also can purchase hearing aids. A lot of times people with hearing loss don't consider themselves as having a disability. They just have a hearing loss. But that does qualify you if that hearing loss is getting in the way of you getting a job or keeping a job. Just imagine if you had a hearing loss and you were going for interviews and you couldn't hear the questions, then you wouldn't do very well in the interview and you wouldn't get the job. So the hearing aids could come in and we could provide those for you. And then you would be able to be successful in doing interviews and hopefully getting a job. We can also purchase assistive technology if there's screen readers that are needed for the visually impaired, or amplifiers that are needed, or even things like all different kinds of assistive technology. And then we can help also with transportation needs if people have them. But this is only a very small list. It really, like I said, is depending on what you need. Next slide. So the purpose of vocational rehab services is to help people with disabilities obtain and maintain employment. Also, that is consistent with their strengths and their interests and their abilities. And that is what we try to help them achieve. VR services are eligibility based, and they are tailored to the individual, like I talked. Our services are not time limited, but we are not intended to provide long-term services like for the rest of your life. As I said, we do help you look at your goal for employment. And if your goal requires that you get a 4-year college degree, then we can work with you for those 4 years through college and then into getting a job and making sure you're successful on that job. So even though 4 to 5 years sounds long-term, it's not. It's focused on what you need to get you to work. And so some people have, get services for 4 to 5 years. Other people get them for 3 to 6 months. It's all depending on what they need. The services are all arranged by the vocational rehab counselor. So every individual that is eligible for services has a counselor that sits down with them and works through this whole process with them. One point that I really want to emphasize is that income is not part of our eligibility. You noticed on that screen that income was not a consideration. So anyone can be eligible for our services based on their disability needs. But when we look at purchasing something for them, paying for something, then we do look at your income. So basically we work on a sliding scale. There are some things that we may not be able to pay for if you have, or we may not be able to pay the total if you have, if you're over our income guidelines, but that does not mean that you're not eligible. It just means that you might have to pay some of the costs. Next slide. So that was our program in a nutshell. If you want to know more, or if you think that you might be eligible and you want to talk to someone, what you can do is there are local offices in the lower Rio area, and I believe that Ricky and Jeanette will talk about their locations later in the presentation. But just as an overview, you can call the statewide call center number at 512-936-6400. And you will speak with a representative, and you can tell them your information, and they will get you connected to the local office near you. like I said, we have offices all over the state. So sometimes it's easier to call the call center number and get connected. You can also do a search. You go onto the website of www.twc.texas.gov/VR near me. And that will bring up a web page that you can enter your zip code, and it will give you the office location and the address and phone number for your local office to that zip code. So I'm going to pass it over to Andrea, and she will take it from here on transition. I'm sorry, Adriana.
No problem. Thanks, Megan. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go through the transition portion of vocational rehabilitation. Next slide, please. So our transition services are provided to help students make that successful transition from high school to whatever independent living looks like after high school. And as Megan mentioned, this is tailored, it's individual. Everyone comes through our door with a completely different story, and we're here to honor that and to help tailor our services for their path. And so working in partnership with our student hireability navigators, our workforce boards, our school districts, our school partners, our community resources, we're helping to make sure that they're as prepared as possible when they exit. And it's such a critical time in a youth's life. We've all been there. And so we know that that journey is not straight. There's a lot of twists and turns and hills and mountains to climb. And we're here to help make that as smooth as possible. And we know that you all are also, and thank you for being here today, because it does show that commitment to our youth success. We define students between the ages of 14 to 22. So as young as 14, we're able to start that conversation with families, really get an idea of what does this look like for you and your family and your child, all the way up to 22. So we definitely have a lot of students who graduate from high school and want to go to college, university, vocational training. We're there for that as well. And we tailor our approach on what I call the big five pre-employment transition services. You might see it called PREETs. And the big five include career exploration, work-based learning, counseling on post-secondary opportunities, job readiness, and self-advocacy. Next slide, please. So under career exploration, and you might also see it called job exploration counseling, things that the schools are really already doing. And honestly, we start talking to our kids about this when they're in kinder, right? Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it changes. So we're looking at vocational interest inventory results. We're examining the labor market. So we're not just asking, what do you want to be? We're like, great. Now, can you do that job in this area, or do we need to move? We're looking at in-demand industries and occupations, like those hot jobs in Texas. Like medical field is always exploding, depending where you live. It might be mining, quarry, like gas industry. So really taking a close look and seeing what's in demand where they live. Are they looking at a non-traditional employment option? I don't know how many times I would get told from my students they want to be on YouTube. That's very non-traditional to us, right? But there's a whole new world out there. We want to identify career pathways. And one of the most exciting questions I would ask students is, what do you love? But like, what do you not love? Because I also want to know what you're not interested in doing. It's a full picture. We really need to get the best view of our students. Next slide, please. Work-based learning has been proven to be one of the most significant positive indicators for student success. If we can expose our students to work as early as possible, then they're at a better advantage of developing and maintaining those soft skills that are going to ensure that they keep what we call competitive integrated employment. And so whether it's doing in-school or after-school opportunities or our summer programming, some of the list here includes like paid work experience, non-paid work experience, volunteering. I know some schools have a requirement. You have to put in a certain amount of hours before you can graduate, job shadowing, career mentorship, workplace tours, service learning. These are opportunities for our students to actually, get their feet wet and start to develop those skills and put it into practice. Our first jobs may or may not have been very successful for us because we're just learning how to develop and really refine those skills. And so our agency helps assist with making sure work-based learning is integrated into our students' lives. Next slide, please. Post-secondary opportunities. This is really, touched on a lot, I know, at high school level. And moving forward, I think the new guidance is for high school seniors, they have to complete a FAFSA or fill out an opt-out form. I mean, there's really an emphasis placed on creating, I think, more of an incentive and more of a push to really look at post-secondary opportunities. And so we're looking at different programs across the state and region that have been developed specifically for specific disabilities. We do have really great partnerships with those programs. Texas A&M really leads the way with those. We're navigating disability services. We're getting them set up with student accommodation services and making sure that they understand what can follow them from high school and what cannot. What kind of services the school can provide and what are some of the services that we might need to step in and help provide. We're talking about financial aid. We're emphasizing the importance of those deadlines, those registration deadlines, who they need to speak to, their academic advisors, and then just making sure that the college application and enrollment process goes smoothly, because we know that can be a challenge. We want to ensure that we remove as many barriers as possible. Next slide, please. Job readiness, you'll also see it called workplace readiness. So these are the traits, these are the soft skills that employers expect, right? All of us need to be on time. All of us need to be professional. All of us need to be able to advocate, speak up. Those are all skills that you have to learn through practice. They don't come naturally for everyone. And I would even say there's like a spectrum that everybody falls on with different skills, and we all display them differently. And that's fine, but we need to help our students understand how to be comfortable and then how to integrate those skills into the workplace. We look at things like social interpersonal skills and even independent living skills, because as we know, they all kind of overlap in some ways. Next slide, please. And so I have some examples of the social and interpersonal skills that employers expect, and we can work with our students to really help strengthen and even refine. We have vocational adjustment trainings that we're able to provide to our students in areas like, soft skills for work success, exploring the you in work. These are the introductory steps to understanding things like communicating effectively, working in a team, conflict resolution. What does your body language say about you? Not just in the interview. So I know we're all taught, the importance of that, but what does it mean when you're in a group meeting with your boss and your coworkers? What do good manners look like? What does cooperation mean in different work settings? Next slide, please. And like I said, we talk about independent living skills because this really ties into your soft skills and how you show up to work. Is your hygiene, up to par? Are you leading a healthy lifestyle? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you maintaining your energy levels? Are you on your cell phone during your shifts? Everybody's attached to that cell phone, but are we talking about these really integral pieces to employment? These are not listed on the job duties, right? I mean, your job duties say one thing, right? But then understanding what's behind the scenes is quite a different story. So we want to make sure that they're set up for things like using transportation effectively, whatever that looks like in their local community, money management, financial literacy. Are they tapping into all levels of services and supports? Are they also engaged outside of work? Work is a very fundamental part of Western culture, right? Especially here in America. Your job really defines who you are in ways that may not be reciprocated across cultural lines. So we have to be really cognizant of what that means. And does a family and culture also place emphasis on community participation, being part of generational households? What does it mean to have a full and developed life that also extends beyond the workplace from 8 to 5? Next slide, please. I talked about some of the other valuable skills. Financial literacy has always been important, but honestly, it's becoming even more important. And we're seeing a lot, like more development of curriculum and instruction coming down for the federal and state level regarding finances, money management. These are tough conversations for anyone to have, understandably. If we can help, facilitate those conversations and really create curriculum that's tailored for our customers to get a good understanding, that's a huge boost to who you are as an individual. I have orientation and mobility skills listed because we do service individuals who are blind or visually impaired. And that's a huge skill set that they have to learn quite early. And we have very specialized supports for those individuals. The job seeking skills, understanding your employer expectations, and like I mentioned before, those soft skills that are necessary for employment. Next slide, please. Our last big 5 is self-advocacy. This is, at first, I would say a difficult concept for a lot of us to put into practice or curriculum, because it can go across a lot of different lines. We want our customers to feel like they have the strength and the resources to effectively communicate their needs, to negotiate their place in the workforce, to be able to speak up about their desires. We really believe that individuals have the right, the dignity of risk, the dignity to make mistakes, the dignity to be self-fulfilled in whatever method or means that make sense to them and their circle of support, whoever they invite in to help make those decisions. And so we want them to be able to pursue activities and work that makes them feel empowered and makes them feel excited to get to work every single day. Next slide, please. And I have listed some of the self-advocacy skills that we cover. One of the big ones here is disability understanding and disability disclosure. We have a training specifically on disability disclosure. And that's like maybe the number one question we get is, should I disclose my disability? And if so, when? And if so, how? And who do I tell it to? And it's really important for them to understand. We want to help them know their rights and responsibilities. I love that training because it really talks about when you're in school, you're protected under this law. And this is the way it protects you. When you leave high school, you're no longer protected by that law. Now you're in something separate. And so here's a general understanding and what you need to know. If your boss violates those restrictions, if you get asked questions that make you uncomfortable, who do you go to? Who can you trust? These are really important, and particularly they can be difficult conversations to cover, but I'm really proud of the ability that our trainers have in ourselves to be able to provide examples, real life examples, and walk through what that can look like in different scenarios. We want them, if they need long-term support plans, we want to put that in place. And we want to monitor that progress so that we're seeing them step into being able to really assert, their own individual needs. Next slide, please. And so our TBRCs, that's short for Transition Vocational Rehabilitation Counselor, they're assigned to various schools. And pre-COVID, they spent the majority of their time on school campuses. You might know if you're a transition counselor, or you might have a general counselor. And so they carry adult caseloads, but they have high school liaison assignments. And if you're not sure who the assigned counselor is, you can definitely reach out to myself or even Miss Megan and your student hireability navigators as well. We're all in direct communication and we can help get you that information. Next slide, please. Just some quick information on why we place so much emphasis on transition. Under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, This is legislation that identified that a lot of students with disabilities were leaving high school and they weren't set up for success for the workforce or to gain the necessary skills after high school to be successful in competitive integrated employment. And so it really changed the shift to expand. Don't just think about adults. We need to think about youth. They are the future of this country. And so we have to make sure that we're investing in their long-term success. Next slide, please. So Title IV of WIOA made the change that all VR programs across the nation, because we're in all 50 states, we're required to spend 15% of our federal funding specifically on pre-employment transition services. And that's a lot of money. So we're really trying to outreach and spend services and get connected, because we truly believe that if you provide the exposure to the concepts and experiences earlier rather than later, you're setting your students up for success. Next slide, please. So under WIOA, we also introduced a new eligibility status called potentially eligible, and that gives more access to the younger students. 14 and 15-year-olds historically were not the target. We really looked at like 16 to 22 for a while. Now, if you expand that definition, then we're able to really provide more services. For example, you might have a 14 or 15-year-old who wants to start the conversation. They want to try a VAT. They want to ease into VR over time. Their parents are like, I see the benefit of this program. I'm not really sure if we want to dive in, let's ease into this. Perfect. Then that's a great opportunity for us to get involved, start those conversations, maybe have a training every summer. And then as that student gets older and needs more services and really wants to take a bigger step into our services, we're really able to do so. Next slide, please. So how to get started. As Megan was stating, work with your assigned VR counselor. I don't expect you to learn all of this information at once because it's a lot. The ask is that you reach out to us for support and allow our counselors to be those subject matter experts and to serve as your guide, to walk alongside you through this process to help those skills become attained and really create that individualized plan for employment. We are working remotely at this time. Some individuals are going out to schools, some office locations have staff that are in and out throughout the week, but we're still completely open even remotely. And so that counselor will discuss the intricacies that I kind of touched over and really have that tailored conversation with the schools, the parents, and that circle of support. Next slide, please. And we always want to reiterate, and this was put into place due to the pandemic. We have that statewide call center. You will talk to a real live person, promise. And the phone number is 512-936-6400. And as Megan stated earlier, we have offices all over. The Navigators will talk about that. And you can also visit the website. You can type in your zip code and you can see what's the most convenient option for you. So thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about VR.
Thank you, Adriana. That was such a wonderful overview of VR. So now we'll transition into Workforce Solutions. So we can skip some slides to Workforce Solutions. Next slide, please. Another one. Okay, so now Jeanette and I will be talking about transition services to Workforce Solutions. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So you will find that we work very closely with vocational rehab services. As Adriana mentioned, we have direct conversations and work together to leverage resources and maximize the services available to students with disabilities and the community. So we'll be talking about our role as a student hireability navigator and tell you about some resources that we have available to you. All services are free. I just wanted to reiterate that. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So before we begin, I wanted to break down 3 branches of under the Texas Workforce Commission. We just learned about vocational rehab services, right? They transitioned into under the Texas Workforce Commission a couple years ago. And that has been such an integral part of truly advocating and supporting our workforce and ensuring the inclusion of people with disabilities, because they are the future, and we believe that they need to be included to truly advance the workforce of our nation. So they provide specialized supports for people with disabilities, right? Then we have the workforce boards throughout the state of Texas. We are Workforce Solutions Lower Rio, and in our service area, for all of you in Region 1, ESC, we have other boards involved, such as Workforce Solutions Cameron, Workforce Solutions of South Texas, and Workforce Solutions of the Coastal Bend. Those are some of the boards directly involved in our specific ESC region. So our offices are a one-stop service, and Jeanette will go a little bit more into detail about that, but we're so happy to announce that we are in the transition of being completely co-located of both vocational rehab and workforce solutions. Sometime this fall, our anticipated date is October, and we're truly going to be a one-stop center, especially in our Edinburgh office and our Weslaco office, who has been already integrated, and a new office that we'll be introducing this fall in McAllen. So these offices, any individual with or without a disability is able to enter and enjoy all the workforce services that we have available to advance employment, both for job seekers and employers. Lastly, there's the unemployment insurance division. And sometimes people may confuse unemployment as something we provide, but in reality, that's a completely different division focused for people on unemployment benefits. We do serve people who benefit from these services, but we do not directly provide assistance with this service. Just wanted to clarify. Next slide, please. So here you'll see the 28 different boards throughout the state. If one of you is listening from out of our service area, there's a link provided to you where you can identify your local Workforce Solutions board office. Next slide, please.
So Ricky mentioned that Workforce Solutions is all across the state of Texas, and Workforce Solutions Lower Rio, which is the board that we represent, we cover the counties of Starr, Hidalgo, and Willacy County. In our service area, we do have 5 different workforce centers that serve our public, our community. They are located in Edinburgh, in Mission, in Weslaco, Rio Grande City, and Raymondville. Next slide, please. And just in case you're not too familiar with the services that are offered at our centers, we are showing you here a flyer and just some of the services that are offered, such as assistance in searching for a job. We do go off of workintexas.com. Individuals are able to locate jobs all across the state of Texas based on their qualifications, based on their interests, based on their city location. Workforce also offers training assistance, whether it be short-term, on-the-job trainings, and of course, other support services. Childcare services are also offered by Workforce Solutions. Currently, we do have open enrollment, which means that there is no wait list for this service. There used to be one, but these services can be beneficial to parents who are either going to school or are working. And of course, this is depending on eligibility, on how Workforce can provide those services. And then of course, some of the general access would be internet access, printing copy machines. Oftentimes when individuals need these services, it's easier to go to HEB and fax a job application that they may need to send out. But just know that Workforce Solutions does offer these services absolutely free. But currently, due to COVID, we are only accepting individuals to go into our centers based on appointment, which can be made through our website at www.wfsolutions.org. And you can set up an appointment there, or you can chat with one of our representatives as well. Next slide, please. So target occupations, this is something that Workforce Solutions all across the state of Texas offer, but of course it varies. These are occupations in our area in the counties of Star, Hidalgo, and Willacy County that are high in demand. And what this means is if there's an individual who wants to go into one of these occupations, depending on eligibility, Workforce Solutions can possibly assist, whether it be with tuition, with books, with gas cards, with uniforms. It just depends, but just know that these services are offered by Workforce Solutions. And this is one of those services where Workforce and our local VR partner do work together on to provide the best service to individuals receiving services from both agencies. Next slide, please. And I mentioned that we are providing services by appointment. This is something that can be accessed through our website. And this is just a brief screenshot of how you can go about doing so. Next slide, please.
So now we'll begin talking about the role of the Student Hireability Navigator. This initiative started when the Vocational Rehab Services transitioned under TWC. The Texas Workforce Commission collaborated with the Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities to create a strategy, right, on how to address the statewide barriers to transition and the unemployment of and underemployment of people with disabilities. So that's when the Hireability campaign came to life, right, as a statewide initiative. And with that came the role of the Student Hireability Navigator to serve as a liaison in a way between Workforce Solutions boards and vocational rehab services, bringing together a collective impact, collaborating with partners, and raising awareness about joint services from these two great agencies. In reality, especially VR is a hidden jewel. Not many people know about the great plethora of services available to people with disabilities. And as Student Hireability Navigators, we're here to promote these, to attend community events, go to the school districts, work with educators, families, stakeholders, to have these conversations and link them to these services. We are at your disposal, all of you here attending, to promote these services, to collaborate with you and see how we can strategize and identify projects where we can support you and coordinate effective services to our community, right? We definitely connect all stakeholders and convene to listen and implement strategic, systematic solutions. We know that the barriers to transition is a systemic problem that requires systemic solutions to address, right? So we approach this in a holistic approach where all the sectors of the community are involved. We recognize that individuals with disabilities face obstacles with employers because of stigmas and misconceptions about employment. We also know that parents have fears and concerns about some of the experiences their son or daughter may experience. And we also want to work with educators, right, to learn and to collaborate with them so that they can make those connections to their students, so that when the student exits high school, they'll continue receiving support from community agencies, such as the ones we're presenting to you today. Next slide, please. So Adriana mentioned the big five, right? And we as Student Hireability Navigators also try to address and promote these wonderful different categories to prepare students for employment and to effectively transition out of high school. So we collaborate with VR. We have conversations on how to strategically connect our educators and our school districts to these services. So if you ever want to schedule us to go to your school district to meet with your students, with your families and educators, we're happy to coordinate an individual meeting and bring in VR as well. So I know that today we're just providing a broad overview, but we can always schedule a follow-up meeting to sit with you and continue these conversations more in detail and identify ways that your school would benefit from these services. Next slide, please. So these are the three main focus areas that we do as student hireability navigators to create that systemic change. First is the capacity building and system development. So we have listened to educators and students and families about what they're experiencing, what are the barriers to transition. And we are always open to continue having those conversations. If you ever want to just sit in and we'll tell you about our transition coalition, we open that to all stakeholders to join in and share their opinion. We want to learn about what is going on because that's the only way where we can create solutions, right? And start working collectively to address them. So we are ensuring that all our services are accessible, inclusive, and that people's opinions are heard. So introducing and raising awareness about the services is our first step to ensure our community is informed and is tapping into these great resources so that they can be supported to enjoy all the services that they need to be successful in the workforce. Partnering and collaboration is another important segment because we need to communicate with our educators, right? Every week we send out resources, our hot jobs, events that are being coordinated. And that relationship is so important because that's the only way that we tap into the students, right? And educators. So if you are not currently on our distribution list, we encourage you to connect with us so that we can include you on that list. So we are, as I mentioned, always open to sit with you, schedule a meeting. Now through Zoom, right, we're able to meet anytime without the barrier of transportation. So we're able to connect easy. So we want to learn about how we can collaborate and partner with you to enhance and maximize the supports available to your students, because we definitely want to break down silos and try to do a greater impact by partnering, right, and leveraging our services, our talents, and our time. Lastly, one of our goals is to get students employed, the individuals with disabilities. So one way to do that is by working with the engaging employers and informing them about the services. Adriana mentioned the WorkBased Learning as a great tool to introduce employers to this great talent pool that is untapped and underemployed. So introducing employers is one initiative and incentive where we get employers starting to get familiarized with working with people with disabilities. And many times they employ them because they realize the true benefits of having a diverse workforce in their business and how it advances them. And we know the benefits, right? All of you here know the great impact of having an inclusive workforce. And we want to educate employers to understand that. And there's an array of different supports available that for the employers to help them be aware and receive the supports to have an inclusive workforce. Next slide, please.
So as student hireability navigators, who do we connect with? We connect with various individuals in our community, of course, with vocational rehab. As navigators, we do promote the pre-employment transition services that they do provide, ensuring that individuals in our community, educators, students, parents are aware of these great resources that are available to assist them with individualized transition resources, whether it be to post-secondary education or to employment. Our local school districts, we, of course, pre-COVID, we would visit with some of our local school districts, and we continue to do so virtually. But to try to find out what barriers are being faced when it comes to this transition process of students. And although we don't have all the answers, to see how it is that we can assist by providing or connecting to available resources. Advocacy groups, we connect with advocacy groups in our community to once again to speak to parents and their children to inform them of what is available for them. Employers, as Ricky mentioned, there are stigmas when it comes to hiring individuals with disabilities. So we want to ensure that employers are educated on the great benefits that come with hiring any individual with any ability. Post-secondary education, we do communicate with our local colleges, our university as well, to ensure that we are informed with what needs to be done when students transfer over to college and to post-secondary, to post-secondary education, such as, we are aware that when students are at the high school level, they, certain services are provided to them, where when they move on to college or university, these are services that they are going to have to seek out on their own. There won't be an additional individual that is going to do it for them. So just information like that. And of course, parents and stakeholders. We know that parents are the #1 advocate for their children, and we want to ensure that they too are aware of the resources that are available to them. Next slide, please. So Ricky touched up on some of these barriers earlier in the presentation, and these are some barriers that have been expressed to us by some of the educators that we have communicated and met with in our service area. Some of those being parents fearing their son or daughter will lose benefits if they work. When it comes to this particular topic, just know that there are individuals from vocational rehab that are very well educated and versed in this topic to inform parents on how their students can possibly still, how their children can possibly still work and continue to receive their benefits. Or sometimes working can possibly be a better outcome for them. Employers having negative biases. This is something that we are collaborating with when it comes to educating employers. We are collaborating with VR to provide disability etiquette when it comes to hiring individuals with disabilities. Individuals don't have the required soft skills or social skills to obtain and maintain a job. Adriana mentioned this earlier in her presentation as well, that to obtain a job, to get a job, there are certain skills that employers look for. But once you have that job, you need to have certain skills and social skills to be able to keep that job. So Ricky and I developed a couple of modules on a curriculum, which we'll be going over in a little bit, on how to address these barriers. And then, of course, the self-advocacy, of course, very important for students to be aware on how to self-advocate for themselves. So once again, these were some barriers, and I didn't go over all of them, but these are just some barriers that that have been expressed to us that students do face when it comes to transitioning to post-secondary education or employment. But we have educators here, parents. What barriers have you seen that your students or children have faced that are not listed on here? Please do connect with us, because we would definitely like to see how we can address these or how we can relay you to the right resources in our community. Next slide, please. So once again, when it comes to those barriers that are being faced, we don't have all the answers, but being able to collaborate with different partners is a great way to go about these. So there's this quote that we wanted to share: is coming together is the beginning keeping together is progress, and working together is success. And Ricky will be sharing just some of the ways that we've been able to collaborate with some of our partners.
Next slide. Okay, so some of the recent initiatives that we've done in collaboration with VR and other community agencies these are just to name a few. We had an STC roundup, which was a fair for students with disabilities interested in enrolling at South Texas College. We brought in different speakers, right? The financial aid office, the disability department, admissions, and other services available to help students be informed about the services to transition into this college, right? So this is one event we just had at the beginning of this year. And we'll continue having this on a perhaps annual basis or at the beginning of every school year. We also partner with our local school districts to create transition fairs. At the beginning of the pandemic, we did create our first virtual transition fair, and we made it available to all the school districts in our service area. So this is just one example where we can, if there's a need for a particular event, then we can work towards developing, or we can collaborate with you to enhance it. So we're always open to working towards this specific task, which we think is very important to connect students with disabilities to resources in the community and beyond. During October, which is National Disability Employment Awareness Month, we try to host an annual Hireability job fair, specifically getting employers who are open to hiring people with disabilities to advertise and promote their job openings. So these we host. The first time we did it in Starr County. I know we have some representatives here from Rio Grande City, so welcome. And we collaborated where the schools there in that region bus their students to our workforce center so that they can learn about our office, receive an orientation, work on their resume, and then they were prepared to go to the job fair where they had their resume ready, and they once they met the employer, they applied on Work in Texas, which we encourage, right, for individuals to have their Work in Texas account. So this was a successful event, and this past year, we had it virtual using our virtual platform for job fairs. So we continue to plan for these on an annual basis, and we hope to continue engaging with the school districts so that students are able to be linked to these job opportunities. We also have networking events similar to the transition fairs, right? And I want to mention, right, again, reiterate that we're always open to go to your schools as small, it doesn't matter the size of the group, it could be small, it can be large. We are open to present to you and anyone about these services and collaborate to see how we can collaborate. We also provide disability trainings. Jeanette mentioned we're in the process of establishing one. And these are specifically for employers, but anyone can benefit from this just to learn about the different disabilities, because, there's disabilities is such a broad term, right? That consists of visible, invisible, cognitive, developmental, and so on, right? So we want to address the differences. And even then, one disability alone, like autism, manifests differently on every individual. So we want to educate employers and not have a stigma that every person with a disability is the same as everyone else, because that's not true. So the awareness is very important, and the accommodations that pertain to the disability as well. So that training will be available soon and can also be requested to do it in person. We collaborate with VR to provide these trainings to our community. Next slide, please. So we do have an established transition coalition bringing together different stakeholders from our community. We have educators, we have community service providers, and other agencies that are here to have these discussions on breaking down silos, as I mentioned earlier, because we have such great organizations in our community advocating and creating opportunities for our stakeholders, but sometimes we don't hear about them, right? And when we collaborate, we're able to maximize the potential of each of our initiatives, right? We're able to collaborate and bring in different sectors and different opinions that just make it so much more comprehensive, and that different people in our community are able to relate and access these services. So as I mentioned earlier, we encourage parents and students with disabilities to join us as well. And if you're an educator interested, you're also welcome to join us. Everyone's opinion is important, and we value it so that we can work together and truly address the barriers to transition, because that's what it takes, a collective impact to move forward. There's been so many accomplishments, right? This past year, we celebrated, as Megan mentioned, the 100 years of VR. It was also the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, right? So we are reminded, especially through this pandemic, that there's so much more work left to do to continue becoming fully inclusive for people with disabilities, and everyone, right? Everyone benefits from an inclusive environment and mindset. So we welcome you if you're interested. Our information will be available at the end of this presentation. Next slide, please.
So some of the transition resources that we have are listed here, and I'm going to go over briefly on some of these. So resources available to any individual, but that we feel that these resources have been great to individuals or students with disabilities. First one being our job readiness curriculum. This curriculum started off as a 10-module curriculum, 40 hours, to enhance individuals and prepare them for the workforce. It goes over different types of soft skills. Well, although these modules can be modified to meet the needs of individuals or students with disabilities, there wasn't anything specific to target that population. So Ricky and I came together, and with the help of our colleagues or supervisor, we were able to create 3 additional modules as listed on the screen, one on self-advocacy, another on career exploration, and transition resources. So these were added, of course, with individuals with disabilities in mind, and to further enhance their soft skills. The great thing about this curriculum is that individuals who go through this with whether it be an educator, teacher, or staff or paraprofessional, they are then eligible to receive a certificate of completion through South Texas College, which is something great that can definitely be added to a student's resume. Workforce Center tours. This, of course, has been put on pause due to COVID, but this is something that started off, and we look forward to continuing, is inviting students, whether it be classrooms, kind of like Ricky mentioned with the job fair, but inviting students to be able to visit our workforce solutions centers. It's one thing for individuals or students to hear about what workforce solutions is, but it's another thing to be able to go in there and actually see what services are being provided and who they can go to. And of course, during these workforce tours that we've had in the past, we've always invited Depending on the school that is attending, we've also invited the vocational rehab counselor that's also associated with that school. That way the students can also meet the VR counselor that represents and that could possibly represent them in a system as they move forward into their post-secondary goals. Interview stream prep. Interview stream prep is a great tool to prepare individuals for that interview. So what makes this tool stand out is that individuals or students or whoever may benefit from it are able to record themselves answering interview questions that can be pre-selected based on industry or can be asked general questions. Once the student or individual records themselves, they can then forward this interview, recorded interview, to their teacher, to a parent, maybe to a friend to receive feedback. They're able to receive feedback on whether it be them not making eye contact, or maybe they're not answering correctly. Whatever it may be, the students can receive feedback on these interviews. And once again, all of these resources that are discussed here will be provided to you via a Padlet at the end of this presentation. Career Coach is another tool that is also offered on our Workforce Solutions page. And this is a great tool to be able to go about and see what students or individuals' interests may be, or to also create a resume. There is a resume builder link on this page, and individuals are able to first create an account to save what they input into a resume, but it enables them to put in information, fill in information on a spreadsheet or on the page. They are able to select their maybe job experiences that they've had. Some information is pre-selected where they can just click on it and it adds it to their resume. But then when they are done, they are able to export this onto a Word document, and it puts it in the exact format that a resume, a professional resume, should look. It can then be edited, of course, to add and delete any information that may be needed. But this is a great tool for any individual who's struggling in creating a resume, and to also help prepare them for a possible future job. Our online referral system. We have an online referral system through our Workforce Solutions page, and this is a great tool to be able to refer or make an appointment at our centers. You can refer to our local VR unit, or also refer to our local Workforce Solutions centers. And once again, this will be provided as well. And our video library. Since September, of course, with COVID going on, Ricky and I started a Facebook Live series on our Facebook page, WF Solutions. And every other Wednesday for about 10 to 15 minutes at 10:30 in the morning, or 10 in the morning, sorry, we would invite some of our community partners to discuss the different types of services that they offer for individuals with disabilities or transition resources in general. Sometimes we're not too familiar or aware of all the great resources that are available in our community. So just know that we do have a video library with all of these resources. You can also access them through our Facebook page. They've been recorded, so they have been saved. Or you can also visit these and look at these through our Individuals with Disabilities page on our website. Next slide, please. And as mentioned earlier, we've mentioned VR often because we are great partners. We partner with them often, and our partnership is crucial. So as mentioned earlier, if you would like to get in contact with your local VR, you can contact the phone number that is listed, or you can also contact myself and Ricky, and we can definitely connect you with the VR counselor that represents your service area or your school district as well. Next slide, please.
So we're approaching the end of our presentation, and we wanted to end with a call to action. So we hope that the information presented to you today has been beneficial and informational to you. And we wanted to let you know that all this information will be provided to you so you can look into at a later time. And I'll share with you how in just a moment. In that, we do have an event coming up next week, a Youth Career Conference on the 18th and 19th of May, which will be Tuesday and Wednesday next week. We will be providing you the flyer with that. And there's going to be 3 different tracks for parental engagement, career exploration, and soft skills. So these different tracks are very important, right, for the youth to be preparing for their transition. And all of you are welcome to register and attend that conference. It will be in a similar platform as today. And our workforce outreach specialists have been working diligently to put that together. So we're looking forward to that event. So we also want to encourage you to connect with us. If you don't already have a relationship with us and want to tap into these services and be involved and aware about updates and information coming up through Workforce Solutions and VR, feel free to connect with us. We'll provide you our information shortly so that you can stay connected with us. So Megan, Adriana, is there anything you want to encourage our audience to do?
This is Megan. Just if you have any questions or know someone, whether it's someone listening today or someone in your family or a friend, I just encourage y'all to contact us at that statewide call center number. I'll give it again, 512-936-6400.
Yeah, and I would also, echo that sentiment, and just if you know of a student or a family who's expressed hesitancy or, has those big questions and just doesn't know where to start, reach out to one of us, and we can help get that conversation started and really create that, safe and comfortable environment. The first step's the hardest step, but we know that we have dedicated professionals who are here to make that transition as easy as possible. So please just feel free to reach out.
Thank you. Yes. And, the VR, especially the transition vocational rehab counselors are available to attend the ARD meetings at your schools, but we do encourage you to schedule those early in advance so that they can try to schedule you to attend those meetings. But yes, we're all here. We are as Adriana mentioned, we collaborate each other. So whoever you reach out to, know that we're working together and we'll connect you to the appropriate representative. So we can move to
Adriana, I just wanted to ask before we move on to the next slide, can you share that phone number one more time?
Yes. So that phone number is going to be 512-936-6400.
Thank you. So let's move to the next slide. So Jeanette has put together for all of you a Padlet, which is basically a link that includes all the resources we presented to you today. On this column, you have the list of all the presenters from today, our contact information, our email, and the agency we represent. The second column will have the flyers or brochures for vocational rehab services, both in English and Spanish, and other websites to learn more about that agency. Then we have information from your local Workforce Solutions Board, Lower Rio. We have our flyer, our website, and other links. We have resources that were presented to you today, such as the job readiness curriculum that some of you were asking about. I wanted to mention for the job readiness curriculum, that is available to you to implement. But if you wanted to receive a train the trainer and receive credit from South Texas College for your students, feel free to connect with us so that you can, so we can provide you that train the trainer session. There's all the other resources there that we introduced. And lastly, we have the presentation. We have translated this presentation in Spanish so that any Spanish speaker can also learn about the information shared today. So as mentioned in the chat, you can either hover your camera of your smartphone over the QR code to access this link, or you can simply open the link that was just posted on the chat. And you can go back and refer to these resources and information throughout so that you can share and utilize later on. So I'm going to also put on the chat a survey, which will be emailed to you later. But if you have the chance now, feel free to complete it. We truly appreciate your feedback and look forward to continue collaborating with you. Next slide, please. So at this time, we'll go ahead and entertain any questions that you may have. We tried answering them throughout the session, but if there's any other questions, we'll welcome them at this time. So Jasmine, I know you've been following the live stream on YouTube. Are there any questions that came in through over there?
There are no questions or comments on YouTube.
Okay, thank you.
There was a question in the Q&A box that maybe Megan, Adriana, and Ricky can answer on behalf of each agency. Does the employer pay half and the organization pay the other half of their pay for individuals?
I think I would need further clarification on which program that might be referring to. I'll give an example and hopefully it answers it. Like for our summer Earn and Learn program, we as the agency and vocational rehabilitation partners with workforce, the local workforce boards. And so we fund the pay for the students. The employer does not pay payroll. We handle that on our end. But if it's a different program, that answer might change. So it just depends on the program.
Thank you, Adriana. And I want to say for Workforce Solutions as well, it just depends on the type of program that the individual is participating in on whether the employer would pay for part of it or the organization.
Okay, so I see a question that says from Mariana. Mariana, do you want to type in your question?
Mariana, you should have the ability to unmute yourself now, if you would like.
Hello? Yes. Yeah, this is Marina. So the question I had when thinking of barriers to employment, and it's still not really clear to me. I've only been in Texas for 2 years. We were before in Maryland, so things were different. But so one of the things is that our children, if they are not able to be in the, I have 2 sons with autism. If they're not able to be in the general education classroom, their only option is a life skill classroom, and they get taken off the general ed, the standard curriculum, and so they cannot graduate with a high school diploma. And so that for me is a big obstacle, because I have a son, for example, whom I feel with support could be in gen ed. However, because of the size of the classrooms, it will be really hard for him. So he has to be in a self-contained classroom, but then it's a self-contained classroom where he's not in the general curriculum, and he gets life skills with, some academic instruction. He takes the alt star, etc. So I don't know how easy it is to go back to the diploma track, and if not, does the certificate allow you to access vocational colleges? Because I think he could do engineering, or he wants to go to college. And so I think parents need to learn more about that, and there need to be more flexibility, because right now we don't have that choice. I don't have another option for him.
Sure, absolutely. And that's a really excellent point. That really dives into a very close conversation with the independent school district that your son's attending. And those ARD meetings, having the support of even vocational rehabilitation. We do offer, and it's not in this presentation, it's called Charting the Course. And it's based out of another area that talks about endorsements. It talks about graduation options. It touches upon some of what you're mentioning. What does the district follow? What does the state of Texas follow? Because it is different from state to state on the inclusion practices for our students, and how does that set them up for success? And what does that mean if they are interested in pursuing programs that are going to require, the diploma? That's a very specialized, issue and very specialized question. I can definitely follow up with you after this presentation to provide some more guidance and more tailored information if you'd like, and connect you with some resources that could assist in that conversation.
Okay.
I'll put my
Thank you.
email in the general chat, and my contact and my cell phone as well, so you have that information.
Mhm.
Just to also mention, when we talked about the different people we work with, that included special education and 504 students, right? So we want to collaborate with the school districts to connect those students to transition services, right? Because just because they're in a special education classroom doesn't mean they can't go to college, right? That is not the case. Want them to receive the tools in whatever type of classroom they're in, so that they can be successful in their transition. They do receive a certificate, a diploma, regardless of what program they're in, and just wanted to clarify. Are there any other questions at this time? And we'll continue. You have our contact information. We'll continue to look out for questions from you, and feel free to continue that conversation with us. Right? We're always here looking towards learning about your situation and how we can work together to support you. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. So once again, here's our contact information from the 4 presenters. Myself and Jeanette, I'm sorry. We're the student hireability navigators locally to assist you. And Adriana and Megan are for our region, right? So they serve a broader service area and are at your service as well to connect you to VR and information for transition.
And just know that our contact information is also available on the Padlet that we provided. It does have our names, our contact information, our emails, so that you can also reach us at a later time if needed.
Okay, next slide, please.
So this concludes our presentation today on transition services. Once again, we want to thank our presenters, Ms. Megan and Ms. Adriana, for joining us today. I hope you guys had received some great valuable information. And once again, thank you for joining us on this presentation. You will be able to locate this presentation also live on YouTube, so that you can also share. Thank you, everyone.